well.
Gordo's
Oh.
settling in. Okay.
Gordo's an honorary member of the Illuminati, so that's fine.
Yeah, he doesn't even have to pay.
But for the rest of y'all, welcome to the monthly bonus episode for you lovely patrons who are our favorite cryptic cuties. We love you. The Illuminati, the best of the best. Gordo is our honorary mascot. He should be the mascot for the Illuminati part. Cats are so much more cryptic than dogs. And Fenrir will be our normal other mascot.
He'll be the Castles and Cryptids regular public mascot. Gordo can be
him and unofficially our little cartoon Sasquatch.
Yes. Oh, so cute.
He doesn't have a name, but we could think of one, I guess. What do you name a Sasquatch anyway?
The first two things that popped in my head were Sassy and Quatch.
Oh my god. Sam the Sam Squanch. That's
Sam. That's
Sam
very
Squanch.
supernatural.
No, but Sam Squanch I think is from Trailer Park Boys. I think that's a Bubbles thing he says.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I did start calling the squirrel out back Squirrely Dan because we just see him so often. I had to give him a name finally. But
that's from something. Is that Letterkenny? Squirrely Dan? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big guy, yeah.
Yeah. One that adds S to everything.
Yes. Yes, as he does. Sashimis and sushis, and that's what that's what I appreciates about him.
Yes, I love it. I have a bit to catch up on. I think I watched the last season, so I think I'm only maybe an episode or two behind. I think that's it.
Yeah, they randomly come out on like Christmas Day sometimes, and then it's like, here's a bunch of Letterkenny to watch. And Pat's always like on top of it. He's like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of new Letterkenny today. I'm like, oh, is there? And then he's like on Crave. There's a bunch of shit on Crave actually. Like Ressa has been talking about the show Barry with Bill Hader.
Yeah.
And so now it's kind of, my interest is a little bit peaked there now. Oh yeah, because yes, I guess I talked about it on the podcast here because she keeps sending me clips from it, and then one of them was about podcasts and how it's annoying if you can't look up the pictures while you're driving because you're listening to a podcast. And it was like with Guillermo del Toro, and then she texted me afterwards and was like, I knew you'd eventually talk about the Barry podcast scene, and I was like, well, you told me about it. You know I don't have a life. Of course I'm going to talk about something you told me about.
Right? Neither do I, yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's all TVs and movies. Now I sound like Squirrely Dan.
And books.
Oh, we are book nerds also, yes.
Yeah.
Can confirm. Pat just bought me a book, which it's cute because he knows who I read, so sometimes he'll still do that, of the ones that I have collected. So it's one of the Cassandra Clare books, the Shadow Hunters.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, one of those series. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And he was like, well, you have the other two. If you didn't want this one, like, I won't buy them anymore. And I was like, no, it's good. I had just gone to the library, so I was just like, meh.
Oh, fair. I get like that. You're like, I own this. I own it forever. I can read it whenever. But anything that's on a sort of timeline, you're like, I want to get to that first. That's the priority.
Well, that, and like, I'm also still just like waiting for payday. And so then he got paid, and then he's all, I bought you a book. And I'm like, I'm still broke, but thank you. So I was kind of like, it was very sweet. But I was like, also, I would have taken the book money if you had asked.
Oh.
But to be fair, he'd also already given me gas money because shit be outrageously expensive these days.
Yeah. True that.
The world's going to shit. No, we're hanging on, y'all. You're here on Patreon, so you clearly love us enough.
You're sending money to us, which we appreciate.
Just for our talentless voices, and we appreciate it. Because we work hard. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're coming back to the videos. Speaking of working hard, we're gonna do different. I'm just not editing on that same place. So when we do a couple of our mini-sodes soon, we're gonna record them. It's in the works soon. Then we'll figure out how we're gonna edit them, and then it'll be a fun experience. But
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we're always trying to improve for y'all. Get the game up. Especially videos, man. I just don't know.
It's
hard,
awkward.
y'all.
People always talked about like how awkward it is. I don't think I really understand how much it is until you try and do it yourself.
Or like how much I guess I should invest in a tripod or something. I don't know how people get the good videos and the pictures what they have at the good angles, where I'm like, how are you just not propping it up on a table?
Yeah. Something. They have a really tall friend. Always.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, there's ones where there's like podcasters on the go, and I'm like, oh, good for you for having like the third, like the boyfriend of someone, or like the the friend who tags along and then like is helping them take their videos and stuff. I'm like, that's awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Never the third wheel, more of the third podcaster. If anyone wants to help us, go on Bigfoot Adventures and take videos, and just help us take videos. Let us know. We're down. Oh, feels like a while since we've done a Patreon one.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing?
Feels like forever.
It does. But we must have done one in April.
I think was April the like Netflix
Murders?
watch along.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why, because that was just like watch something, type up your notes, kind of talking points, and then that's it.
Yeah. It's something a little bit different. So
yeah, it's not as much as involved, I guess I'd say, as these types of episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends, because watching stuff can feel fun.
Yeah.
But then you have to take notes on it, and you're like, oh.
You're like, I have to make sure I'm paying attention. Because I will need to discuss this later.
Yes, I would love to bring Pat in more on some rewatch recap ones, because he was good to have on for the one with the bling ring, because I've realized I rely on him a lot for his memory when we're watching movies. You'll be like, have you seen this movie? I'm like, hang on, I don't know. Pat, have I seen this movie? You know? Because he'll remember way better than I have.
I would not remember half of the stuff I watch if it wasn't for Letterboxd recording it all. Yeah, shout out. Like, they have saved me so many times. I've gone to go on Netflix and been like, this looks like a semi-okay movie. And I'll start watching it. And as it's playing the intro, I'll go into my Letterboxd, search the movie, go to click that I've now watched it and been like, and it says, you've already watched this. And then I go, cool. And I pause the movie, close it, take it off, and just watch something else. And like, you just saved me. I don't know. I do not remember this movie at all.
Yes. And you don't always know if that was because it was a bad movie or if you just forgot.
Yeah, so many times. So
it's weird. Yeah. I do hear Letterboxd like reference sometimes, and I'll be like, oh, that makes me think of Kelsey. But then I also thought it was referenced as in like, does anybody like use Letterboxd anymore or something? And I was like, I don't know. Kelsey does.
I do. If they made one to keep track of, if they made one that was better to keep track of TV shows than the ones that make you basically click that you've watched each episode individually, which is very annoying, and then it'll send you notifications every new episode, which is not
Oh.
kind of annoying. It's like, I know, like, I don't care about individual episodes. I just like to keep track of the shows I've watched and more so TV shows and stuff that people have told me about or that I want to
Yeah,
watch in the future
yeah.
instead of writing them down on a piece of paper and trying not to lose it or something.
Yeah, that's me. I'm Post-it girl. I get it.
Yeah. It'd be
Yeah, it can
nicer
be
to
handy.
keep track of that, being like, oh, somebody told me about Barry, and somebody told me about this, and this show, and this show, and eventually I want to watch them. So it'd be nice if you could log them
Yeah.
somewhere. But yeah, things seem to be that you have to click that you've seen specific episodes, like every episode of every season of a show. It's like, why can't I just say I've seen that show? All 15 seasons of it. Just fuck off. I
Sorry.
don't want to do this 350 times.
And I mean, yeah. I love
It'd
when
be
you say
brutal.
15 seasons, which immediately makes me think Supernatural because they ended up with 15 seasons. But I know there's other shows that did more. Like
Yeah, well, it's like,
freaking Grey's
um,
Anatomy and bullshit.
yeah, I think Bob's Burgers is like on season 12 or 13, and Criminal
Okay.
Minds
Ow!
was up there quite high.
I kicked my
Yeah.
desk and it hurt my foot.
But yeah, it's like, I don't want to have to put that I watch each episode. That's stupid. Anyway.
No, that is stupid. But it does sound kind of handy, like the way I've been using Goodreads to keep track of like what books I read this year.
Yeah.
At least then you're like, oh yeah, I put it on here or whatever.
And when you're telling
Um
somebody about something and be like, oh, I read this really good book or watched this really good movie. What was it called? I don't know. And then you can look
that's
it up and be like, it was
true.
this.
Yeah,
Like,
because I have a
that's
terrible
nice.
memory, and don't we
Yeah.
all when it comes to like what you've watched?
I'll be like, I remember the movie poster because that's always what I remember. It's the movie
It's
poster. And
true.
then I just scroll through Letterboxd looking for the movie poster. Be
I'm
like,
so
here it is.
visual like that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, speaking of TV shows that we both watched, there was something I was going to tell you from today. I was listening to a podcast, of course, at work. It's because it's Let's Not Meet, and they do scary stories, true horror stories from the Let's Not Meet Reddit subreddit or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but the special guest was I like saw the name and it was like featuring so and so, and I was like, oh, that name sounds kind of familiar. And then I was knew they were going to talk about who it was, so I just was like, whatever. And then when the special guest comes on, she's like, "Oh, it's Jessica Nicole. You might know me from such shows as like The Fringe and
Yes.
and
I
this
love Jessica
podcast."
Nicole. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, Jessica Nicole."
Astrid Farnsworth.
That's Astrid. I had to think of what her name was because he always gets
Yeah.
it wrong too. I had a Walter moment. Yeah, she's apparently
Very
a
cute.
big fan of the show, and she read a few on
That's
his like as a
cool.
guest reader. And then he said the host, his name's Andrew Tate, but apparently he's the good Andrew Tate. There's apparently a kind of a
Yeah.
obnoxious Andrew Tate in podcasting also. That's not this guy.
Okay. I thought there was like a true crime case involving an Andrew Tate. I'm sure there is. Because I was like, when
No.
you're like, he's the good one, I was like, yeah, not the bad one. Like, shit.
No, no, I hadn't heard of the other one until people would be like, "Oh, Andrew Tate, the good one," and I'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh, yeah.
But like, I guess there's one that's kind of more of a got some interesting views or misogynistic or whatever the fuck, and he's like, "Oh, it's
Ew.
great that I have the same name as him because now he got famous," and
Ugh.
yeah. But oh my god, it'd be a dream to read on his show. And yeah, it was fun. She read on it and he said that she was in a podcast called Alice Isn't Dead or something. And I was like, what?
Oh.
Yeah, so I think it's a sort of maybe more of a drama one where they
Yeah. Like reenact kind of one.
yeah, it's more like you listen to it as like an
Cool.
audiobook or something. Yeah, but I was like,
That's really
oh.
cool.
I know he was all excited to have her as a guest, and then I was all excited that I knew the guest. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah. I was
it's fun.
rewatching, what was it?
Oh, excuse me.
It was something on YouTube. It was either random Parks and Recreation moments or like the funniest moments or moments taken out of context, one of those types of videos.
Ooh, yeah.
But I
My
think it
fave.
was season 4. I don't know, I was watching them one day because I was bored. As I said, I didn't want to commit to a movie, so think I watched this random shit for like 2 hours. It's like, sure, random Parks and Rec shit on
The
YouTube.
YouTube rabbit hole. Yeah, just keep suggesting things.
Um, and I think I listened to this one part like 6 times and I even put on the automatic subtitles on the YouTube video because I was like, I don't remember this. But, um, fuck, what's his name? The guy, Ben. Ben, sorry.
Oh, Adam, fucking what's his name's character?
Yeah,
Leslie
but
Knope's boyfriend.
Ben, like, as the character, he
Mm-hmm.
says something, I think it's when he's sick or like after he's laid off or something like that, and he says he goes back to the beginning watching Fringe to look for plot holes, and he's like, and guess what? There are none. And he said it so offhandedly, and then it cut to the next thing. I was like, wait, what? And I clicked back, and then I was like, kept listening to it over and over again. I was like, I'm sure he says Fringe, but he says it so quickly. And then I turned on the
Yeah.
automatic subtitles, and it said Fringe, and I was like, did they make a Fringe reference in Parks and Recreation? I didn't know about this.
Right, it's like barely, right? You have to like
Yeah,
blink and you
it's
miss
like
it kind
a
of thing.
throwaway comment about him
Yes.
talking about doing a rewatch to try and look for plot holes and that there are none. I was like,
Oh, yeah,
well,
when
there
he's
are some.
totally like going outside of himself, all bored to tears
Yeah,
because he lost his job. And is that when he makes cones
the
of
claymation,
Dunshire?
yeah, and that
Or-
the claymation. Could a depressed man do this? It was like,
oh, that too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like the
yeah.
other one because it's like a board game, and I'm like, ooh,
Hmm.
board game. I'm
I
like,
think it
I've
was around
created my
that.
own board game. Am I crazy? Sorry. Yeah.
Uh, but it was like, oh,
Oh, it's
they
funny.
talked about it because I was like, it's all the Game of Thrones ones were like so overt, and I was like, oh my god, Fringe, because it's so, I don't know, it's like underground. The people that like know about Fringe, like
It's literally on the fringes.
yeah, it's like J.J. Abrams, but like nobody fucking talks about it. It was like, oh my god,
No,
it was
I
in Parks
didn't.
and Rec.
Yeah, it was. It's one of those. Well, I was gonna say, so's The Office and Parks and Rec. We didn't watch them when they were on air, but maybe it's more of a cult classic.
I think so, but yeah, I was so excited. I was like, "Oh my god, I don't think I've ever noticed this before." And the stupid thing was is I was watching Fringe before I ever watched Parks and Rec. So I was like, "How did I not catch this?" Like from the very beginning.
Oh, I
Like,
love when you catch something on a rewatch where you're like, "Oh, I know this person now." Rewatching
yeah.
Modern Family, and I was like, "Oh, Sanjay's mother is someone who's on freaking uh Critical Role and shit all the time. Like she plays
Oh.
D&D. She plays the mother of a nerd, and she's a nerd in real life." I love those little
Nice.
things where you're like, "Oh, that's too
Yeah.
funny." Oh my god. Anyway, I could talk to you all. I've been watching different things, and we could probably babble to you all
Forever.
night. Yeah, I guess we better let you get going, and then maybe we'll have a movie minute later if people are interested. We'll start doing it as a separate segment.
Yeah. We'll just edit all this out and we'll just compile every movie and TV show we talk about in the week in like a separate podcast.
Okay, but literally two shows I listen to have like something similar on their Patreon. One is called Extra Credit, and
Oh.
the other one was it's called A Shot of Kool-Aid because it's on drinking the Kool-Aid. And the first one's
Okay.
on Night Classy. So anyway, and it's
Ah.
like a little bit of extra banter and extra stuff. So yeah,
Yeah,
people
we
do
could go
it.
forever.
Some
We
people like
really
the
could.
side banter. Yeah, we'll make sure to
Yeah.
record it all, and then if people want more of it, then it'll be a Patreon
Yeah.
bonus.
Yeah, let us know. But today we haven't even said what we're talking about, and it's so loosey goosey
um,
here. It's crazy.
23 minutes
We
in, do you think they want to know?
I
They've
don't
read the
know.
title.
I hope so. It'd
The
be
description
wild.
might indicate it. Keep them guessing.
Yeah. We're doing alien abductions, encounters, whatever you wanna call it.
Always
We
comes
just
back to aliens.
yeah, we just decided on aliens, so I am covering one that's very well known. I know Alana knows about it. I didn't
Oh, are
before,
you?
but
I can't
Yeah.
remember now.
You forgot? Well, when I told you the name, you said, "Oh, I know that one." And I
Great.
was like, I didn't know it. But yeah, it was still really interesting because I had never heard about any of this, and that's the Falcon Lake incident in Manitoba here in Canada.
Okay, I remember the name. Yes, the name sounds very familiar, and
Yeah.
so I think it's one where you're like, oh yeah, I might have heard that covered on like one thing, and you're like, why isn't
Mm.
this covered on like more shows? Because hell,
Yeah, it's pretty
we're like,
wild.
yeah, okay, I love those kind of ones where, yeah, once you know about it, then you're like, "Ugh, you guys don't know about it? That's always Pat. Oh, I know about that. I'm like, well, you don't talk about it to me.
So Falcon Lake is located in Manitoba, about 150 kilometers east of Winnipeg.
Ah, the
Winnipeg.
capital,
hmm
for those of you
So,
that know.
yeah, this has
I
been
hope most
Canadian
Canadians do.
geography.
Hey,
I would
capitals
hope
are good to
so.
know.
We only have 13 to worry about. We're not like the US that has 52. So,
Wait, 50.
well, they do.
And Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
They have a couple
Yeah.
territories or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh, who knows? Sometimes I listen to podcasters and they say something about American history and I'm like, "No, you're wrong and you're American." But I love you.
Just
Oh
shows you
man.
the education system.
Right? Oh yeah. It's not great anywhere. It could be better.
So 51-year-old Stefan is it Michalak worked as an industrial mechanic, and in his free time, he was also an amateur geologist, which is
Oh,
pretty cool.
fun.
Yeah. Uh, while living in Winnipeg, he enjoyed taking the bus to nearby Falcon Lake and going out into the wilderness, into the woods to look for different rocks. Specifically, he liked to look for quartz and silver. So,
Oh my god. He's going out
yeah.
rock picking.
Yeah. Before Stefan moved his family to Canada, they actually lived in Poland, where Stefan was originally a military policeman.
Oh
Which,
wow, okay.
mhm.
That's
uh,
kind of
or that,
intimidating.
yeah. So he's not kind of a stupid person or anything like that. He had a very high profile job.
Right.
And amazingly, one of the sources also said that previously him and his wife had survived the concentration camps during World War II,
Oh my
which I wanted
god.
to mention because that's amazing. It said that them and quite a few of their relatives survived them, which is,
Wow.
I think, amazing. So I think it was after that that he became the military policeman, and then after that is when they moved to Canada. Yeah.
Can you imagine that's just part of your backstory?
Right?
And like
So
before we had,
scary.
yeah, we didn't have a lot of words for like trauma and stuff in those days or how to deal with it very well.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh yeah, they come back all shell shocked. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, it breaks
Yeah.
people.
Absolutely. So Stefan was the type of person that firmly believed that if something happened to someone, like something bad, that they should always report it. They should always tell somebody
Okay.
and let other people know. So it either like something could be done about it or it didn't happen again.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
very commendable.
Yeah. So in my research, I did actually run into because Stefan ended up typing up, I guess, a manuscript, because he wasn't happy about how his incident was covered in the media after it happened. So he ended up typing up his own version of events. And I did come across a podcast that somebody had done with his son that did have like reenacted excerpts from the manuscript. So I do have a bunch of quotes from Stefan from the manuscript, which I thought was really cool.
Oh.
that I'll sprinkle through because I feel like that's the best way to explain what happens is directly from his own words how he typed them up. And then I kind of have other people saying what happens kind of in the little in-betweens of the quotes I managed to find.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
pretty
that's
cool.
good. Wow. I mean, especially if they're, you know, kind of well spoken, you're like, oh, a quote right from
Yeah.
the horse's mouth is really what you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. So this is quite a bit. I'll let you know when it goes back to not his manuscript. So this is what he says what happens that day. It was 5:30 a.m. when I left the motel and started on my geologic trek. I took with me a hammer, a map, a compass, paper and a pencil, and a little food to see me through the day, wearing a light jacket against the morning chill. The day was bright, sunny, not a cloud in the sky. It seemed just like any other ordinary day, but events which were to take place within the next 6 hours were to change my entire life more than anyone could ever imagine. I will never forget May
Ooh.
20th, 1967. So there's the date it happens, which is crazy because when I was typing it up, it said on May
No.
long weekend. And I was like, oh, it's May long weekend. And then it said on the 20th. And I was typing this up on the 20th. And I was like, oh no.
That's so
I
cool.
was like, no.
I literally just looked at the date
Yeah.
when you said that because I was like, is it the
This is
20th? It's like very close.
it's the 24th right now, guys. We're recording this on
Oh,
the 24th. Yeah. Yeah.
synchronicity.
Mm-hmm. I was like, Alana will appreciate this. Uh
I always do, especially when things tell you that if you experience a lot of synchronicities like that, it means you're on the right track. I just think that's such a
hmm.
lovely thing to be like,
I like that,
oh,
yeah.
this, yeah, it feels like very reassuring. You're like, I must be doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
Getting all the signs.
So while chipping at the quartz, I was startled by the most uncanny cackle of geese that were still in the area. Another
Cackle.
source said a
They
gaggle of
honk.
geese. I was like, a gaggle of geese. And I was like, I kind of love that too. But
It is. Well,
yeah,
that's the official name for a group of geese, is a gaggle.
a gaggle. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's how it's a murder of crows. Yeah. Isn't
A gaggle of geese.
that great?
I love it. Something had obviously frightened them for more than my or far more than my presence earlier in the morning when they had given out a mild protest.
A mild protest. Okay.
Yeah. Then I saw them, two
Honk.
cigar-shaped objects with humps on them about halfway down from the sky. They appeared to be descending and glowing with an intense scarlet glare. As these objects came closer to the earth, they became more oval-shaped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're changing like physical shape in front of his eyes.
But first you
Uh,
said they were cigar shaped with a hump. Is that
Yeah,
right?
so it's kind of like cigar shaped, and then there's like the little dome. Very
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
cliche, like spaceship, round disc, little top in the middle.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I kind of view that as, yeah.
Well, it almost sounds to me like a cross between the classic flying saucer and then the strictly cigar shaped ones that they just call like the Tic Tac ones or whatever that don't have the
Yeah.
hump. Yeah,
I
it
kind
almost
of
sounds like a
was
cross.
picturing when I first read it, I almost pictured a submarine, like a long skinny submarine and then
Yeah.
having the top. I was like, "Oh, a submarine in
Yeah.
the sky."
Yeah. Yeah, that
Like it
sounds
would look
right.
weird. It would look weird.
Yeah,
Uh
they're very like aerodynamic,
yeah.
smooth and whatnot. Yeah.
Suddenly, the farthest of the two objects, farthest from my point of vision, stopped dead in the air, while its companion slipped down closer and closer to the ground and landed squarely on the flat top of a rock about 160 feet away from me. Yeah, so one's landed.
That
The
seems close.
yeah,
Not good with measuring distances, but that seems close.
it's fairly close. Yeah, enough that an object this big, you'd be able to like it'd be intimidating that it was this close to you.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of the GPS now. And 200 meters. I'm like, oh, what is that? No.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get you. Yeah, you could see it. It's no less than like a football field away. Yeah.
Yeah. The object that had remained in the air hovered approximately 15 feet above me for about 3 minutes, then lifted
Oh,
skyward again. Mhm.
that's weird.
Yeah, that'd be creepy.
Yeah, just a bit.
Then my attention was drawn back to the craft that had landed on the rock. It too was changing in color, turning from red to gray, red to light gray, and then to the color of hot stainless steel with a golden glow all around it.
Oh man.
Mhm.
Hot
After,
metal.
yeah, like the hot glowing, like it's, think like a forger's fire, like it is red hot.
It would just like
Um,
light up the forest, you would think.
yeah, right. Just
Oh.
burning down and stuff. Uh, After recovering my composure and regaining my senses to some degree, I began watching the craft intently, ready to record in my mind everything that happened. So jumping back to what I could find about like other things was Stefan believed it was some sort of secret US military craft,
Hmm.
and he actually spent the next half hour hidden and working as best he could to sketch the craft and like little details.
Smart.
Hmm. He decided to approach it, and he later said that the air was really warm around it and the smell of sulfur was really strong as he got pretty close to it. Uh,
Interesting. Yeah,
and
he's
his,
like very observant.
hmm and the little sketch that he ended up drawing is kind of labeled, and it'll be in the drive, but other people can look it up. It's fairly popular. When you Google the case, it comes up really easily.
Oh, you can find the sketch that he made.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah, and I did put it in the drive for you.
All right, I'll have a
Um,
look.
mhm. So, the craft itself was described as 10.5 meters or 34 feet long and 4.5 meters or 15 feet high. So, very big. And
Okay.
as I kind of said, the craft, as he kind of said, the craft changed colors. So kind of going from like red and gray to like red and light gray, like it was morphing colors as he was looking at it.
Right.
And the craft also didn't appear to have any sort of insignia or logo or writing on it. And it was very smooth. Um,
Smooth like
smooth.
butter.
Yeah. Oh,
Ah.
yeah.
Oh, I see that it's very much a hand-drawn sketch.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can't read any of the writing around it, but
Nope.
I think it's because
Ooh.
like English is not his first language, so it might be written in like Polish, but I'm not
I
too sure
could
on that.
maybe make out like position metal, but that's a guess. But
Yeah,
yeah,
because what I
goodness.
did read too is that this man's manuscript was translated into English, so it wasn't written in English.
Mm. But also
Yeah,
it's like it's just kind of a scrawling kind of cursive
yeah,
too. Yeah,
100%.
yes.
Yeah,
Just kind of difficult to decipher.
yeah,
But very, very like detailed drawing of like the classic like flying saucer shape,
yeah,
with the top which is probably where they see out of, and the bottom which is you'd assume where the engine is, but their propulsion systems seem to be something that we don't understand, so who knows.
yeah.
Very cool.
So going back to what he says happened, I approached the craft once again and touched its side. It was hot to touch. It appeared to be made of stain or of steel, a steel-like substance.
Oh right, because he just walked up and touched it.
Yeah, like it's still
That's so
there.
fucked up.
There were no signs of welding or any sort of joints that could be seen anywhere. The outer surface was highly polished and looked like colored glass with light reflecting off of it.
Wow.
It formed a spectrum with a silver background as the sunlight hit the sides. He goes on to say, I noticed that I had burned my glove I was wearing at the time when I touched the side of the craft. Like his fingertips of his
Holy.
glove had burned and melted.
Right? Like you touched a hot stove.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So going back to what else I could find to fill in the blanks, it said he could hear the sound of motors and air hissing. There was a door on one side that ended up opening while he was really close to it, and inside was
Mm.
super bright lights, and he could hear these two muffled voices coming from inside.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
That'd be so
be
insane.
like shitting myself. Uh,
Right? Like someone with a military background, I feel like they're
yes.
more prepared. Like I can just picture Pat in this situation or something like that. And I don't know, he's one of those that always seems rather, if not calm and collected, at least in control of a situation. Like he's gonna be like, all right, we're gonna deal with this. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, man. If
And
you had
think
like anybody else, they'd be freaking out.
Yeah, think too, because I go back to the fact that even years later, he always is adamant he didn't ever really believe it was aliens. He believed it was some sort of US military craft that was top secret and in Canada. So
Hmm.
him going up, touching it, and I guess not being super paranoid or scared in that moment, I think has some to do with that. Because he's not
Yep,
necessarily
that's
thinking
true.
aliens when this is happening.
Yeah, that's true. It's viewing it from a
Uh,
very like logical
yeah.
perspective.
I'd say especially when he ends up calling out and kind of yelling at them, assuming they're having problems and they've kind of crash landed, and he offers his help as a mechanic.
Well,
Uh,
that's just what you come to expect when you're in Canada, you
right?
know?
It
Maybe
said
I
he
don't
called
stop for
them,
everybody, but a good Samaritan stops when you're having engine trouble.
yeah, when your flying spaceship crash lands in the forest, Canadians will be there to help.
That's probably the
Um,
first time anyone's ever offered them help with one of their vehicles.
Well, he yells at them and calls them like he says like I'll help you out of there or something, ya Yankees. Which I don't know if
Oh
that's
my
fair.
god,
Yeah, like he
nice.
firmly believes that they're American.
Right. He's like, I haven't seen this shit up here.
Yeah. So the voices inside that he could hear distinctly that there was two voices, they suddenly stop once he calls out to them because he's right outside of the craft when he does this, but no answer ends up coming. So Seven repeats himself multiple times, going from his native language of Polish. Then he ends up repeating his like "I can help you" kind of thing in Russian, and then finally in
Oh my
German.
god.
Like, and
Did
at
he
this
start
point,
out with Polish? Because
uh,
that is,
I believe it was
you know.
English because it says he repeats himself in Polish, and if he believed they were
Okay,
American,
yeah.
he probably would have started with English.
Right,
But
right. I do remember the multiple
yeah,
languages thing, and I think that's a really cool detail. It's just like
yeah,
he's a man of our world. He knows multiple languages. He
yeah,
tried, but they were not one that
yeah.
recognized any of that. Wow.
Uh yeah, so all the voices had stopped, they and no response ever came. So at this point that door that had opened, as I said, the light inside was really, really bright. And
Mm.
he had put on his welding goggles that he used at work.
Oh,
And he brought them
good.
with him when he was doing um kind of prospecting uh for like silver and the different rocks and everything to protect his eyes
Oh,
in case like bits of debris flecked off and they wouldn't cut into his eyes or damage them.
okay.
So he has his welding goggles, which is good. So
Weird.
he puts them
Now I'm
on.
picturing the full welding mask, but that's not
No, it's
right.
just
It's just the
goggles.
goggles.
Yeah.
Like that thing,
Um
it's a whole iron mask and you're welding.
yeah.
Yeah, no.
No, this is the goggles. He doesn't go like that and it slides down all cool.
Yeah, that's right.
I always love doing watching people do that.
Right? Yeah. It's like you have your sunglasses on top of your head. Boom, you push your head down.
Yeah.
That's such a visual.
Um
Nice.
yeah, so he puts these welding goggles on and he peers into this super bright doorway. Inside he saw all these light beams and was able to kind of make out panels of different colored flashing lights, but he couldn't see any of these occupants or people or whatever that he had heard before he started calling out
Oh.
to them.
Yeah.
And when he ended up taking a step back, there was these 3 panels that slid across that doorway and sealed it off. So it's like closed, so he can't see inside anymore.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. The craft then began to turn in a counterclockwise, like spin, and Stefan noticed that the panel that was like came to sit in front of him that was this grid kind of these all these holes. And at this point, he was struck in the chest by this huge blast of, I'd say, like extremely hot air or gas, and was pushed backward. His shirt and his. It said he had like a shirt and undershirt, a jacket, and like
Okay.
a hat or a cap. Well, his
Mm-hmm.
both his shirts and his cap ended up catching on fire. So at this point, he's
Oh.
ripping them away because they're on fire. He's trying to get them off of him as he sees the craft like lifting off and then quickly flying away. I think it's gone.
Right. That's so
Yeah.
weird. They so often, take people on board the craft that it's weird that they're just like, see ya.
Yeah.
you
He
know?
offered to help us. I didn't know they were nice in Canada. Let's get out of here.
What do we do?
Canadians!
This is awkward.
Ah,
Ah,
you've heard of the Canadians. No.
this is making us uncomfortable.
Yeah, this guy's too
That's
nice.
so
Uh,
weird.
yeah. So going
But
back to oh, sorry.
no, sorry, I was just the only thing it made me think of was the only other person I could think that like ran towards a UFO was Travis fucking Walton. And then he got taken up aboard and
Mm,
then his friends were like accused of murdering him because he was gone for like 5 days. So maybe they're a little
yeah.
hesitant to take aboard these people that are so like, "Hey, hi, how are you?"
Having engine problems? I'm a mechanic.
He's so helpful.
Do you want to
Aw.
pop the hood? I can poke around.
I mean, I'm glad he didn't get like probed, I guess.
Yes.
'Cause that can be uncomfortable, I hear.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So going back to what his account of the events, somehow my desire for prospecting had vanished. I decided to go
Oh.
over to the landing site and make a thorough inspection of the place where the craft had touched down. As I approached the site,
Wow.
I felt nauseated and my head began to ache. The spot where the craft had come to a rest looked as if it had been swept clean with a broom. There was no debris of any kind on the rock, no twigs, bits of stone, nothing. It had all been piled up in a 6 inches deep. It had all been piled up in a 6 inches deep circular mound about 15 feet in diameter. So, like,
6 inch
there's
deep,
this,
I think they mean. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like it's this really clean spot. There's nothing there anymore. And remember, you're in like the middle of the forest, in the middle of
Yeah,
nowhere.
it's like it
There's
got blown
everything everywhere.
away.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, the craft and everything sounds so clean that I'm like, how does it happen that way? But if it's always getting so hot, then it would just like
Yeah.
burn away any
It,
like dust.
yeah, it burns everything away.
Right.
As I stood there examining the spot, the pain in my head became more severe, and waves of nausea increased, and I broke out in a cold sweat. I knew that something totally unnatural had happened to me, and apparently it was having adverse effect on my psycho physiology. Physiology.
Mm.
I was like, what? Psychology? Physiology.
No, these are some big words he's
I
using.
know. It's like,
Most people would be like, it's having an effect on my body.
yeah.
Yeah, he's smart.
Um, yeah, so that's what he has to say. And then filling in the blanks, it said that Stefan was disorientated and nauseous. He stumbled through
Okay.
the forest and he ended up vomiting a few times. Yeah. Um, After he makes it out of the forest, he's basically walking down a highway, and he's seen during this time walking down the
Okay.
highway by this highway patrol officer named Constable G.A. Solotki.
McDonald. No, that's a
No.
street here. G.A. McDonald.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that reminds me of Travis Walton a little bit too, because he ends up, well, he's like taken on a road, and then he ends up, I think, just placed again on the side of the road, and then it ends up like calling from a payphone.
Oh, weird.
I mean, yeah, there was no cell phones.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, with this one, I guess.
So the constable ends up assuming that Stefan's drunk.
Oh.
So he kind of stopped him and was talking to him, but he did put in his official report later that he didn't smell any sort of alcohol on him. And
Mm-hmm.
according to Salak, he reports that he did offer Stefan a ride and offered to help him get treatment at Falcon Beach to see like a doctor, but that he was declined, that Stefan didn't want help. Stefan has quite a bit of
Okay.
a different like account as to what happened. Uh,
All right.
he says, I walked out onto the highway and discovered I was about a mile west of the point where I had entered the woods that morning.
Oh, okay.
I directed my steps eastward, hardly able to move my feet. I made some small progress, growing weaker with every step. And the only thing to do was to continue walking. I made very slow progress. My stomach was still churning and my head was pounding like a drum. My only thought was to get to Falcon Lake as soon as possible. As I staggered along the roadside, I heard a voice calling me. Turning, I saw an RCMP constable. Briefly, I gave him an account of what had happened, warning him not to come too close to me because I feared the possibility of spreading radiation. I asked about medical
Okay.
aid. Yeah.
Smart.
Um, I asked about medical aid. He replies, sorry, but I have duties to perform here. I
Ugh.
stared at him, unbelieving what I had just heard. He apparently did not believe a word I had told him, otherwise, he would have acted differently. The constable left me with my sickness, uh, with my sickness and disappointment. So that's basically like he gets in his vehicle and drives
Wow.
away, and he's still just like walking down the side of the fucking highway. Like, yeah.
Oh my god. That's like
Mm-hmm.
in a horror movie when you see the cops pull up and you think everything's gonna be fine, and then the cop comes up and the car stops and it's not the cop at all. It's the killer.
Yeah.
Except in this case, the cop was just like, I don't give a shit. You're fine.
Yeah. Either
But
way, yeah.
he's,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think he is fine.
No. Uh, so going back to missing pieces, eventually he made it back to his motel at Falcon Lake, where it says he spoke to the manager about being able to see a doctor, but was informed that the local doctor was actually out of town.
Oh my
Um,
god.
yeah. I assume because it's May long weekend and tragedies don't happen on May long weekend at Falcon Lake. But
And
yeah.
this is what, a little bit rural, but still,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It seems crazy.
Stefan instead ended up going back to his motel room and kind of resting in his room. He eventually phoned his wife and told her that some sort of accident had happened and that he was okay, he was alive, and he would be returning to Winnipeg by bus, presumably sooner than expected. Um,
Okay.
Accounts of this were a little different. One source said that Stefan's son was like arranged that he was gonna pick Stefan up at like the Greyhound bus terminal back in Winnipeg and take him to the
Right.
hospital. And I read that in the last source I read and then was super confused because everything else I read said that at the time of this, Stefan's son, Stan, was 9 years old. And I was like,
Oh.
huh. So he was gonna pick up his father and take him to the doctor at 9? Cool. Like, fun.
Yeah, I have
So I was
no
like,
idea what's going on there.
Yeah.
That
So I was like,
seems weird.
oh. So I just basically read through the last of that source and was like, yeah, I
Hmm.
don't really know. Not confident using any of these details, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I've had to do that before. I'm like,
Yeah.
everywhere else says they were born in this year, so I'm just gonna
Right?
take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Who knows
Yeah.
what to believe? It's the
So,
internet.
right? So somehow Stefan ends up getting taken to the hospital by somebody. Uh,
Okay.
and it ends up being admitted to the hospital emergency room for these kind of grid-like pattern of burns that have appeared on his chest and on his stomach. And later they kind of end up turning into these raised, almost sore like wounds. Like they're bumpy, they're blistery. Like it's terrible. It's burns.
Right. He's like human, like bubble wrap now.
Yeah, 100%.
The
Doctors.
picture is crazy.
Yeah. That's really
Sorry.
what like drove me into this case. I was like, yeah, he was burned by like something weird. Like,
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, it's very much a grid pattern. It's just like someone
yeah,
took like an operation game or something where you have a bunch of like,
right?
spots and then just like burned him with it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Also very hairy chest, but no, that's not important.
There's also a few other pictures where I don't know if it's like later pictures or what, but it's like a totally different pattern. There's only like 3 of them and they almost look like bruises and they're a lot bigger. Um
Oh, possibly like a later picture, maybe?
I'm not too sure. That
Hmm.
kind of confused me, but yeah.
Interesting.
Um yeah, so he's at the doctor's now, and doctors say that his injuries and symptoms of like this nausea, headache, vomiting, all that stuff are pretty consistent with radiation poisoning, but all the tests they do on him physically come back negative for radiation poisoning.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Stefan's son Stan, who was 9 at the time, was allowed to visit his dad for a couple of minutes the day
We're
after.
pretty
So
sure
the
he
next
was
day.
9 and not picking
Yeah.
him up from the hospital.
Yeah, like Jesus. Uh,
Maybe he could drive the tractor at that time, but probably not the
Yeah. I don't think he's
family sitting
driving
habits.
on public roads at 9.
I hope not.
Yeah.
My almost 16-year-old, it does not even refuses to ride a bike, let alone
Oh
drive a
god.
car. I know I failed somehow. What are
Uh
you gonna do?
yeah, so Stan's allowed to visit his dad for a couple minutes the next day. And he says, quote, I recalled seeing him in bed. He didn't look good at all. He looked pale and haggard, and when I walked into the bedroom, there was a huge stink in the room, like a real horrible aroma of sulfur and burnt motor, and it was all around and it was coming out of
Ugh.
his pores, like just like leaching out of his skin, which is gross. And
And
Stan says it
odd.
was, yeah, Stan says it was really bad, like the smell, and it's just like leaching out of his father's body.
Wow.
Terrible. Uh, so for weeks afterward, Stefan suffered from diarrhea, headaches, he had blackouts, and he ended up losing 13 pounds.
Damn.
And yeah, which is quite a bit to lose in a few weeks. But probably pretty easy when you're like very, very sick. Like,
Yeah, enough
yeah.
that I'm like, wait, what was that secret? Oh, you have to get disgustingly sick. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, radiation poisoning.
Would I like to lose 13 pounds in like
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks? Yes, yes, I would. Do I want to go to these lengths?
No.
Not so much.
Yelling,
Yeah,
yelling, aliens abduct me in the forest. Um,
right.
so it said his lymphocyte count drastically fell to nearly lethal levels. Um,
Oh,
Must be
that's not
something like
good.
lymphatic system in your body. I can't remember what that
Right.
does,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that
yeah.
can't be good.
Maybe he's like red blood cells are low or some shit.
Like lymph nodes, I think probably.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
those are a thing.
Um, it says within a couple days, the news of Stefan's incident ran in the Winnipeg Tribune newspaper. and their story was titled "I Was Burned by UFO," which was
Oh,
not what Stefan believed.
of course
But
not. It
that's
was
their
just clickbait.
interpretations. Yeah. Clickbait for 1967.
So it was buy
And
bait.
my baby.
You have to buy that newspaper. Wait, what
Yeah.
did you say? 1960? Yeah, 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 yeah. You gotta
Yeah.
buy it.
And then his son Stan says, quote, and that's really when everything pretty much hit the fan. Uh,
Mm,
Once the story was public, the RCMP, Air Force, media, and various government agencies, as well as the public, ends up descending on the family's house. Like, basically just harassing them
yeah.
relentlessly. And along with this attention, the family also faced all this criticism and questions regarding Stefan's sanity, and like
Aw.
what he was saying. But he was not saying it was aliens, but everything was claiming he was saying it was aliens. So, yeah.
Right. You can't win for trying
Yeah.
with any UFO encounters or anything because yeah, people are going to discredit you just based on the fact that oh no, you saw something you can't explain.
Yeah,
As if it's
exactly.
your fault that there's something out there that you can't explain.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry.
So, what Stefan has to say regarding this time was the news of what I had seen was spreading rapidly around the world. Articles appeared in newspapers and other publications. Some accounts gave validity to my story, others were quite skeptical. I was afraid, I think, of ridicule more than anything else. Press investigations did not stop at my own home. Reporters went out to my friends and neighbors asking if they thought I was a stable person, whether I drank a lot, and whether I was the type who bragged and boasted a lot.
Ugh,
Yeah.
gross. What were you wearing that night too? Was it like something that would attract alien visitors? Like a short skirt that said probe me here? Oh god.
Was his shirt rolled up and his forearms were exposed?
Oh, the shirt sleeves rolled up and the cigarette pack tucked in there like 1950s. Sorry.
Ugh.
I don't know why that came to me when you said shirt rolled up.
No. Um,
It's the
he
Broadway
continued.
musical.
Yeah. He goes on saying, by evening following the incident, I was totally exhausted. I could talk to people no longer. I refused to answer the phone. I tried to even break off contact with the outside world, which I think is really
Aw.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So going back into more what happened, Stefan published his own accounts in a manuscript, which is basically what I've been reading from, that was titled Encounter with the UFO, and this was released in 1967, and it was later translated and retold in English. I can't remember who it said had done this. It wasn't him. Uh,
Okay. So
and
there's like a
Stefan,
book we can read.
I think so. Yeah, one thing says there's like hundreds of pages of documentation about like what Stefan says happened. That's what his son
Wow.
says. Yeah.
Damn.
Stefan himself during this time maintained that it was a secret military craft, not that it was aliens. And Stan, his son, says, quote, if you asked him what it was that he saw, he would describe it in intimate detail, but he would never say, oh, it was definitely extraterrestrials, because there was no evidence to prove that. He might ask, what do you think I saw? But right up until he died, his story never changed one iota. Nothing about it or how he told it. In all those years since, and with some 300 pages of documentation on the encounter, there's nothing so far that has flawed his story. So, like, that's
Wow.
one thing they say. If people are lying, like, little details change or people slip up. But for
Easily,
basically the
yeah.
next 32 years, until his death, like his story didn't change at all. It was always pretty consistently the same.
That's always impressive to me.
Yeah.
Um and and it always seems to stand out when they're like a Scully type person who
Hmm.
is a bit more known for being on the skeptical side. They're not necessarily looking
Yeah.
for the supernatural explanation. In fact, they're often trying to outright like avoid it and being like, "I'm
Yeah.
no, like this could have been one of our aircraft. I don't know. I haven't seen it." Like, and they're just like
Yeah.
looking at everything very logically, and yet people will still people are so afraid some people to believe in aliens. I think that they'll just, think of any other explanation they can
Right?
think
Yeah.
of. It's just like, oh my
Uh,
god.
so one of the things did say that Stefan's family experienced a lot of like family problems following the incident, and that Stefan's wife Maria was also, like it said, she struggled with helping him following the events. Like, I'm
Oh.
sure there was like a lot she probably didn't understand about it. Yeah, but it just said it she struggled with helping him kind of like come to terms with what he saw or something like that.
Hmm.
Um Jumping ahead a little bit, there was a book that was released titled When They Appeared. It was published in 2017, right around the 50th anniversary of the Falcon Lake incident,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was written by the stun by the Sun Stan. I tried to combine those two words, by the stun, the Sun Stan, and along with a Winnipeg UFO researcher, Chris Ratowski.
Oh my god.
And at first, I
Sorry.
didn't clue into this until I read something like way later because this was like the stuff from Stan and the little quotes is all from a two-part podcast transcript I ended up reading through, and that's also where I got all the
Oh my god.
manuscript excerpts. It was a
Reading
lot.
through,
Yeah,
not
because I
listening to.
I didn't want to listen to it because if it was each one was like each one was an hour and a half long. And if I didn't really just want to sit there listening to it, not knowing if I was going to use any of it, and if there's quotes and stuff I wanted to pull out of it, and I didn't want to sit there and have to type them up. So yeah, I just read through all of it, and then that's where I got all the little manuscript excerpts and everything because they
I
like
guess there
Stan.
is a reason for someone to
Yeah,
have a transcript of their podcast sometimes. I'm always like, who
yeah.
would ever read that? Anyway.
Deaf people, but
No, that's
anyway.
true. That's true.
Yeah, so that's where I got all the excerpts. Stan provided them from his father's manuscript.
Yeah.
And it also later on, the second half was just kind of about Stan and more about Chris. It actually ended up saying that the two men were in school together as kids in Winnipeg and ended
Oh.
up like drifting apart and then reconnecting as adults. And then they chose to write this book together. Stan says that the they uh, in the book title doesn't refer to like the crafts or anything like that. It actually refers to the endless visitors and the media people that ended up harassing the family over the first few years and also
Oh.
included camping out on their lawn. They also
Wow.
followed Stan to school and would ask him questions while he's going to school. Like, he's fucking 9. Like, leave him alone.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's gross. I didn't like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So that's who the they in the when they appeared in the book title is referring to, which I thought
Huh.
was kind of cool. It's kind of like, yeah. He says at this time, quote, it just flipped our lives over, and it took several years before it finally died down. Stan says his father believed that up until his death in 1999, at the age of 83, that he never should have said anything about the incident. Which I think
Aw.
is kind of sad. Yeah, he really regretted it. Basically since like the next day.
That's why it's
And
crazy to me when people are like, "Oh, people do this for the fame and money." Like,
yeah,
what kind of fame is that you want to have? Like, you're
right?
not. It's like most famous people are like, "Ugh, I hate fame, and I'm doing it for like my own movies." You know, these
Yeah.
people are like, "I didn't ask for this in any way, shape,
Um
or form."
yeah. And it wasn't until I guess I read in the podcast when Stan was talking, and he's the one that said his parents had like survived the Holocaust and everything, and how his dad really felt a duty, like if you see something wrong or you experience something, you should always like stand up and say something, because he
Yeah.
said even though he felt like he never should have said something, at the time he did because he felt a duty and wanted to stop anyone else from getting hurt if they saw these crafts, like too, if they
Yeah.
encountered them, because he had such severe symptoms and burns and everything. He didn't want anybody else to get hurt. So that's why he said something.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. When asked whether Stan believes, the son believes it was aliens, he says, quote, "I'm not so close-minded that I can't entertain the possibility that it's otherworldly. I can't discount that, but without specific evidence to show me what it was, I don't know. What I can tell you is that I'm an aviation fanatic, a huge aviation buff, and I'm very familiar with how aviation technology has advanced in the past 50 years. And there was nothing even close to that in the works anywhere at that time." Which is, I mean, they pretty much say that about all encounters. Like what's being described is not really what's
Yeah.
happening
That's
at
why.
the time.
Yeah. That's why the theories always have to be, well, maybe it's some new secret technology that the public
Yeah.
doesn't know about yet.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
We've all got this real secret technology that's super advanced. We're all sitting on it.
So the sighting itself was investigated by a number of levels of government, and actually, the official conclusion, including from the US Air Force, was that it remains to this day to be unexplained. Like, it just, they have no even
Yeah.
explanation, no idea. There
That's the
was,
best you're going to get from government sources, though. That's the
yeah,
closest you're going to get to something was a UFO. They're going to say, well, we couldn't say it was anything else with definitive proof,
yeah.
so yeah.
Multiple helicopter searches were made by different agencies, and Stan was unable to assist in the initial search, having been so ill that he was unable to consume solid food, which makes me so
Jeez.
sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
But he was later recovered enough to be able to assist the investigators as his health slowly improved. Whew, pardon me. Initially, people believed Stefan had suffered from hallucinations, which this is really ridiculous. They
Uh,
believe he suffered from hallucinations as a result of consuming 5 beers the night before. It's like
yeah,
the
okay.
night before, and then he slept, and then he went out. It's
I
like,
would
huh,
just be hallucinating all the time, I guess. No.
right?
What
Yeah.
the oh
Maybe if you
boy.
said like 5 whiskeys or, but yeah, not
All the
beer.
all
Definitely.
the joints, all the weed that the guy in my last killer kids case smoked had LSD in
LSD.
it because no one else is gonna smoke a joint and go out and fucking stab someone like 70 times.
Yeah, that was
Like,
insane.
yeah, you can blame the drugs all you want, but
Yeah.
regardless, yeah.
Uh, and they also said that he had somehow made up the incident in order to stop others from wanting to do any prospecting at the site. So, kind of keep it
Oh,
all to himself.
okay.
However, even if either of these were the case, it still doesn't explain Stefan's burns as well as the burned circle of vegetation at the site that was discovered.
Yeah, literal physical evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A quote from that UFO or ufologist, I don't know.
I know every time I write it down too, I do the same
Yeah,
thing.
ufologist,
I think
uh,
I think I'm gonna
Ratowski,
say UFOologist. I think that sounds best to me.
UFOologist, yeah.
Yeah.
But they always have like UFO and then no other O and then logist. No.
I know it doesn't like read that way.
Yeah.
It hurts my brain.
Yeah. This Chris Rutkowski. says, quote, "The Falcon Lake incident was possibly Canada's best documented UFO case. It even beats Roswell, the alleged flying disc that landed in New Mexico in 1947,
Yeah, well,
because the
that's not
United
Canada, yo. No, sorry.
yeah. Because the United States still doesn't recognize that anything happened in Roswell out of the
Of course they
ordinary.
don't.
So here they say like they have no explanation and they don't acknowledge that anything out of the ordinary happened. So at least here they acknowledge that they don't know what happened.
Right.
So they say it's a little bit
Although,
different.
yeah. I wouldn't say we're that much different from the States. Culturally, we're very much the same, and our,
Hmm.
the stigma is still there around aliens. And
Yeah.
even though there's all the shows about it, people aren't outright like, oh, I believe in aliens every day. But like, come on. I don't know. Like, there's Roswell. Yeah, there's so many incidents that they have that
Hmm.
are just like, yeah, you definitely can't explain that, not with our technology.
Hmm.
Sorry.
So items were later recovered from the site that included Stefan's melted glove, his burnt shirt, and then some tools, which were subjected to extensive analysis at different RCMP crime labs. And no one was ever really able to determine what caused the burns on the items or really on, like, Stefan. And the landing site, this 15-foot diameter circle, was devoid of any sort of moss or vegetation that was growing in all of the surrounding area, really. And soil samples, along with the clothing samples, were tested and found to strangely be highly radioactive.
That is
Yeah.
odd.
And radioactive pieces of metal were taken out of the rocks about a year after the incident, as the metal that was there had somehow been melted into the cracks of the rock, and they
Oh
were
my
able to like
god.
chip the rock away and take this metal out, which is kind of creepy because like what in the middle of the forest
Oh.
hot enough to melt metal?
Yeah, that's totes normal.
Yeah.
Damn.
Unfortunately, there's kind of conflicting things. So one version says that many of these items were later lost as they sort of transferred through these various agencies, kind of testing them. It said that, however, Chris and Stan have one of the pieces of metal that was recovered, which still they say remains radioactive. It did point out, however, that there is a radium vein that is near the site where the metal was found, which may account for all of the object's radioactivity. Um,
Oh,
if there's
really?
like exposure to it, yeah,
A
uh,
radium vein.
yeah, like
Okay,
pure
okay.
radium, which would not be good to encounter. Uh, a different source, however, said that documents collected pertaining to the incident were donated to the University of Manitoba archives in 2019, along with these supposed burned articles of clothing that Stefan was wearing, that a different
Cool.
source said were lost to time. So it's like, are they in the Manitoba archives or were they lost 40 years ago? I have no idea.
Let's go
So,
look.
yeah.
Oh
Next time you're
man.
in Manitoba, ask at the University of Manitoba. And like, hey guys, do you have Stefan's burned clothing?
Okay, I used to
Um,
think they were the province right next door, but they are one province over. But they're not
I
that far
always
from us.
forget. Yeah, I always forget. Well, my mom's from Manitoba, my dad's from Saskatchewan, so yeah.
Okay, and see, I grew up in the Maritimes where everything was just kind of out west. Like
Yeah,
I didn't specifically know necessarily all the different provinces and places very
yeah.
well.
I wouldn't have no.
Yeah.
Um, I know the West. I don't know down east, so I'm the opposite. I know
And
nothing about the east side of
we have
Canada.
a north too. I don't know. It's up there by Alaska, We're a big
Yeah.
fucking country.
So there's these Falcon Beach ranch owners, and they
Oh,
ended up inheriting the land where the incident took place, and they actually offer UFO tours for those who want to visit the area.
No
which is
way.
kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sadly, Stefan remained sick off and on after the incident. He had these reoccurring burns that would appear on his chest and stomach. And
Oh,
he was,
really? It came
yeah,
back.
which is why I think maybe the other picture I saw, maybe it was one of the reoccurring ones because they looked more blotchy.
Oh,
I'm not too
could
sure.
be. Yeah.
Uh, ended up sadly suffering blackouts up until his death, as I said, in 1999. And some people claimed this was just some sort of allergic reaction he was
Oh,
having.
okay.
The clinic he went to, because there was multiple clinics, because again, this was reoccurring, and he did keep seeing doctors. They repeatedly did these thorough investigations, and even at one point sent him to a psychiatrist who, quote, came back with the report that this is a fellow who's very pragmatic, very down to earth, pardon the pun, and does not make up stories.
Does not.
So I'm like,
Oh, very down to earth. Okay. I was like,
yeah,
what
I was like,
pun?
he wasn't abducted. He's
My
very
ears
down to
perked
earth.
up. I love a good pun.
No.
How would it be
Um,
allergic reaction? Is stomach looks like when they start poking your arms, testing you for different things for
yeah,
allergic reactions, and they like poke it all in different lines. That's what it
yeah.
looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Lines of dots.
Yeah, it is like a very perfect grid-like pattern. And the other pictures I
Yeah.
ran across, it is more like there's only three or four of them, and they're just kind of a random
Hmm.
like bleh, across his stomach. And yeah, that's why I'm like, maybe it's not even the same person. Maybe these pictures keep getting captioned wrong
Right.
or something. I'm
I
not sure.
just do not believe anything I find on the internet anymore. But yeah, I know.
um Yeah, interestingly, and one thing Stan did mention multiple times was that the incident was featured in Unsolved Mysteries.
Ah,
And
our favorite.
yeah, Stefan was interviewed by Unsolved Mysteries, and the incident itself was reenacted, of course, with these actors.
Oh gosh.
Um, I did like it, and I wanted to mention it because Stan said it was the best kind of no nonsense like telling of the story. They very stuck to the facts. They did, and then we're kind
Good.
of like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a mystery. They didn't really like blow it out of proportion, do all this crazy
Good.
stuff. He said it was
Yeah.
actually a very professional telling of the story, and the family
Well,
greatly appreciated it.
that's good
Yeah,
because in true crime, like you kind of have to be unbiased all the time
yeah,
and whatnot, and that. And I don't know how you be a cop and like talk to people and you know what I mean, like talk to them unbiasedly while knowing maybe they did commit a murder. Like that's a whole other story, but like that's
yeah.
hard. That can be hard to do to tell it without being like, and then he saw a spaceship. Like, oh, you know.
Yeah. I think it might be too because Unsolved Mysteries I know has covered multiple, like they didn't just do true crime kind of stuff. They did do
Yeah,
a lot of UFO and Bigfoot and all these other kind of stuff. So I feel like they
yeah,
probably
true.
handled themselves really well.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
Another thing is that in 2018 on the 50th anniversary of the incident, the Royal Canadian Mint, because of course we did, Uh, we talked about this in one of the cryptids episode. They did a very similar thing. They issued a $20 non-circulating silver coin that featured the incident, kind of like those little cryptid coins they had.
Ooh.
Um,
I don't
'Cause
really remember the cryptid coins
there
now,
was
actually.
there was Bigfoot.
Oh.
There was like three or four of them.
Oh,
Yeah, they
really?
were pretty
Damn.
cute. Yeah.
Did we talk about
Uh,
them in cold cryptids, maybe?
I think it was the Canadian cryptids one, like one of our first
Oh.
episodes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It
A
was a while
long
back then.
time ago.
My
Um yeah,
memory fails
so
me.
it's a non-circulating coin. It said that it glows in the dark and shows a man falling to the ground after being hit by this exhaust blast
Oh
with
my
the
God.
wilderness kind of all around.
Okay.
I should have looked up pictures of it actually.
That's
I
okay. We'll
didn't.
find some.
Yeah.
One of your pictures has a a coin for scale. I was like, is that a toonie? And then it was like
Oh,
it was next to a
that's the
piece of
piece of
metal.
metal. Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, that's a
Um,
pretty big piece of metal.
yeah.
Mm.
So that's the piece of metal, one of the ones that was like melted into the rock that they recovered.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that is
weird.
weird.
So for this like Canadian coin that they did, there was only 4,000 copies of the coin made, and it said they initially sold at the retail price of $129.95. I just thought that was funny because it's a $20 non-circulating coin for $130.
I hear Dr. Nick from The Simpsons. It's available for $129.95. Like you saw in the infomercial.
Yeah, and if you order today, I'll give you 80 of them free. It's like what?
Just 4 payments of $29.95. No, I
Yeah.
didn't
Oh,
do
it's
the
so
math on
stupid.
that.
Uh, my last thing was just a quote from Stan that I thought was kind of funny. Just said, "If Dad hoaxed this, remember we're talking about a blue-collar industrial mechanic. If he hoaxed this, then he was a frickin' genius." It's like, yeah,
I mean, if he hoaxed this, he's saying, why didn't he do it in a way that transformed it into money for his kids if he was trying to
right?
make money? Because really, the people
Yeah,
it's more of a stretch sometimes to believe that it's a hoax than it's real. Like,
yeah.
and that's just the truth of it.
But yeah, that's the
Yeah.
story of the Falcon Lake incident. It's very wild. What drew me in was the
Yeah.
pictures of like the burns, and then
Love a good
yeah,
fucking picture of evidence.
yeah, that was pretty crazy. Because out in the woods, how is that gonna happen? And it doesn't seem like that'd necessarily be something somebody would do to themselves or something like that, even if they had been
Yeah,
drinking out in the woods or
could
fell.
be
Like,
fakeable, but it would be difficult. You'd have to
yeah,
take a waffle iron to your stomach or something. And even
yeah,
then,
like,
I don't know that
oh,
you get that exact like pattern, but that's kind
yeah,
of what it looks like. Yeah. No, that's
yeah, it's
crazy.
crazy. But
I love a good oh, and then there was evidence or
mhm.
it's great when you see a UFO, but it's crazy when there's evidence left behind or they like talk telepathically to someone and they're all like, well, then I saw all these pictures and like the
Yeah,
Rendlesham UFO forest UFO incident. We
mhm.
talked about that one briefly, but he got like a flash or whatever of a bunch of images and stuff and
Oh yeah,
information and it's just like what the fuck. Ugh,
yeah,
jealous.
yeah. It
Oh,
did
now
say
I
that
can.
like Stefan didn't really like talking about what happened, and
Yeah.
that when Stan kind of got older, he would kind of feel like people that wanted to talk to his dad, he would kind of talk to them instead. And
Mm-hmm.
then, especially after he's like Stefan's death, like he's really, um, yeah, he's been on quite a bit of stuff and talking about it and doing the book. Yeah, it's kind of nice. Hopefully, like something comes of it, like can figure it out. I don't know.
I know.
It's
You hope it
weird.
didn't just like ruin someone's life for no reason, I guess. But it's
Yeah.
really interesting. That's one
hmm
good thing.
Yeah. Well,
It's definitely left a legacy, I think.
yeah, definitely very interesting.
Especially we don't have too many of them up here in Canada.
Right?
What the hell, guys? You're allowed to come here.
They
How
talked
about
about some statistic, like there's like, I cannot remember what it was, but it was something like ridiculous about how many of them are reported like a day in Canada. I was like, what the fuck? It was such a high number. I
oh,
was like, this is insane.
right?
Like,
That shit
yeah.
is insane. That story was insane. Oh my god.
But we'll take a
Yeah.
break and we'll be back for more, I'm sure.
quick break, a little bio break. Gonna go pee and give my brain a shake. All right.
Autumn's Oddities is a strange and unusual podcast made by the strange and unusual, me, Autumn Gruby. Each week, I'll be taking you through some of the creepiest cases true crime has to offer. It won't only be true crime, I'll also be covering cryptids, haunted places, haunted things, and the true stories that inspired horror movies. Listen every Monday and Friday for new episodes. And remember, if it's creepy and weird, you'll find it here.
This has been Castles and Cryptids. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and our YouTube channel. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit. On our website, you can listen to all of our episodes as well as view pictures for each of our segments. Check out our Patreon page to view all of our tiers and become a Patreon supporter today to unlock monthly bonus episodes and behind-the-scenes content. We are working on an Ask Us Anything. You can submit questions by social media or by email at castlesandcryptids@gmail.com. Do you have a spooky ghost story, a creepy cryptid sighting, or a thrilling true crime tale you would like to share and have us include in a future episode? Send us your listener story by social media or by email. Please include the name that you would like mentioned. Our music is by Kobe Fair. Our logo and artwork is by Antonio Garcia. Thanks for listening.